to our Sunday service. My name is Carol Cross, and I'm one of the licensed practitioners here at the Triangle Center for Spiritual Living. And so I get to be the first to say how glad we are to have you joining us today by the magic of Zoom and or Facebook Live. So I'm going to start with some announcements because this month is like such an exciting month for us here at TCSL. The theme of the month is Inclusion in Action. Over the course of the month, we will have 3 guest speakers and 2 interactive workshops. Please plan on joining us for one or all of them. Today, Reverend Daryl Jones returns to our community after a long absence. Reverend Daryl Jones is spiritual director, minister, and teacher who provides loving, nurturing, and transformative one-on-one and group learning experiences. His talk title today is Colorblind or Colorfull. Following his Sunday message, join Reverend Daryl for an interactive workshop on Zoom. The workshop is called Seeing the Full Color Spectrum, Unlocking the Filters of Our Living to Experience the Full Spectrum of God's Expression. He says, through presentation, dialogue, and spiritual exercises, we'll explore this natural tendency of our eyes, mind, and even body to filter out the full expression of God. Whether we call it bias, prejudice, selective vision, or hearing, we all experience or welcome that which we know. What if we expand that which we know or understand? What else of God is there for us to experience? So that workshop will be from 12:30 to 1:45. There is a suggested love offering of $20. You can register on our website at trianglecsl.com. trianglecsl.org. You will receive the Zoom link after you register. Then, on Sunday, August 23rd, join Penelope Gardner and Jack Dennison from Braver Angels as they talk about polarization. Their talk is called Let's Get Together and Be All Right. Jack says, the way we talk within our groups about people who are in other groups is important. If we talk about others in a respectful way, good things can happen. If, on the other hand, we talk about others in a disrespectful way, we become more and more polarized, and it becomes more and more difficult to find common ground and to find a way forward through the many challenges that we face today. They will share their own personal stories of their own personal growth and development and the impact that's had on their relationships and way of being in the world. Later that afternoon, following the service, please join us for a Braver Angels Skills for Bridging the Divide workshop. There is a lot of stress these days among family members and friends who are divided politically, and the current polarized public conversation doesn't help. This workshop will assist us to learn the skills for having respectful conversations that clarify differences, search for common ground, and affirm the importance of the relationship. The invitation is to do the first part of the work by yourself by going to their website at https://braverangels.org/online/skills-training/. Then, on August 23rd, you'll have a chance to practice skills with a partner while being guided in the use of these skills. The Friends of Wakegardium Ad Litem, which is abbreviated as GAL, sponsors a variety of projects throughout the year. If you remember, our outreach ministry has partnered with them in the past. Currently, they are focused on the Back to School project. As you can imagine, the needs are greater than ever this year. Requests for backpack from Wake County Human Services has doubled. But this year presents logistical challenges for traditional back-to-school supply drives. With the uncertainty of the reopening plan for Wake County School, whether it's going to be all virtual or a combination of virtual and in-person, the Friends have had a high number of requests for iPads and laptops, as well as for Texas Instruments TI-84 plus CE graphing calculators. They also have a Computers for Kids program in partnership with the Cramden Institute to provide school-age children, foster, kinship care, and other at-risk children with a computer, printer, flash drive, and software. So, as we say, this is more important this year than ever. So we would appreciate your support. Here are a few ways you can help. You can consider making an online PayPal donation on our website. You can mail a check payable to TCSL, but please write in the memo Guardium ad litem and send that to the Triangle Center for Spiritual Living, 4000 Bearcat Way, Suite 104, Morrisville, North Carolina, 27560. Or you could donate a computer, iPad, or graphing calculator, new or gently used, by contacting Susan Krupa at 919-601-6907. Okay, so that's our announcements for today. And so I'm going to call up to the podium another of our licensed practitioners, Barbara Kane.
Good morning, everyone. Our theme for 2020 is 2020 Spiritual Vision. Our August theme is Inclusion in Action. Reverend Daryl's talk title is Colorblind or Colorfull. I'd now like to read our community purpose statement, which is the reason for our being here. Our purpose is to inspire, educate, and empower individuals to experience themselves as unique and individualized expressions of God, the love intelligence that governs the universe. We are committed to not merely a theoretical understanding of our oneness and unity with God, but to consciously practice this truth in our everyday lives. Through celebration, service, study, and fellowship, we are committed to the transformation of our personal lives and to being a powerful and beneficial presence on the planet. With the energy of unconditional love, simply, we are here for God. And now I'd like everyone to take a deep breath and close your outer eyes and allow yourself to turn within while we listen to the healing sounds of these crystal bowls. And just allow that to wash over you.
I invite you to begin to bring your attention back into your bodies and into your rooms, and to stay turned within as I speak a word of invocation upon our service. Certainly not invoking the presence of Spirit, for the presence of Spirit is always present, but rather allowing our awareness of its presence to expand and come to the forefront of our consciousness. With my eyes closed, I am acutely aware of its presence. Its essence as love, joy, peace, creativity, abundance, and grace. I know that I am one with it. That right where I am, God is in its fullness, in its wholeness. And just as I know that this is true for me, I know that it is absolutely true for each and every person here in the sanctuary this morning, each and every person on Facebook Live, each and every person on Zoom, all sentient beings on the planet. We are all one, connected by this golden thread of God's stuff that weaves itself throughout all of life. And it is from this place of unity that I bless our time together, truly knowing that there is something within the music, within the message, within the presence of each and every one on the call that in some way touches us, that forever shifts us, that allows us to step more powerfully into our highest and best. I bless all of the volunteers that are here, Ava and Heather back in the AV booth, Carol and Babs as they come forward as practitioners to serve this community today. I bless Karen daily as she shares her unbelievable gift of music. And I bless my dear friend, Reverend Daryl Jones, as he comes forward to allow Spirit to have its way with him today. And so I know that this is a good God day and that it unfolds as such. And together we anchor this by saying, and so it is. And so it is. Amen. It is now my pleasure to welcome back up to the podium licensed spiritual practitioner Carol Cross.
Okay, so now we're going to do a ritual of inclusion and action that we practice every month. But it has special meaning this month as we look at this theme of. All right, so the Triangle Center for Spiritual Living honors the diversity and threads of truth that run through all spiritual paths, as represented by this ceremony. Christianity is the path of Christ consciousness, love, and forgiveness. Buddhism is the path of compassion and understanding. Judaism is the ethical path of living by sacred law. Baha'i is the path of unity and peace. Islam is the path of submission to the will of God, the highest calling. Confucianism is the path of deliberate tradition. Taoism is the natural way, the path of ultimate reality. Native American practice and shamanic traditions are the path of primal spirituality. Shintoism is the path of tribal ancestry. Hinduism is the path of knowledge, action, and devotion. Science of mind and spirit is the path of the divine principles of love and law. And the heart represents the one heart, the one love that resides at the center of all people and all beings everywhere, with no exceptions. May peace prevail on earth through the followers of all paths. And so it is. Okay, our reading for today is by Ernest Holmes. He says, "This union, however, does not mean sameness. For while unity requires conformity to principles, unity never means uniformity. Every blade of grass, every crystal, every drop of water, like every individual, is a little different from any other one of its species. Humanity is made up of innumerable individuals, no two alike, and yet society is a composite whole moving gradually towards some ultimate goal. What could this goal be other than that everyone, while remaining individual, shall find a more complete expression in and among all other individuals?" Okay, so close your outer eyes again for a moment as I say another blessing. So, closing my eyes, I turn away from the diversity and focus really on that oneness, that unity. I am one with all that is. And what that one is has 1,000 different names. God, Spirit, Allah, life. It's all just one beautiful, divine spirit. That is the truth of me. It is the truth of everyone on the planet. It is the truth of everything and everyone. And that one is wise and beautiful and powerful and just good. All just divine essence. So I say a word of blessing on Reverend Daryl as he steps forward to reveal that good, reveal that divine wisdom, reveal that divine love and power, and which will change us all. I say a word of blessing on Penelope, whose beautiful voice transports us into that divine realm. I know that this is going to be a service that moves us all towards our goal of a world that works for everyone. Knowing this is so, I release it into the law that always says yes, and invite you to join me with our anchoring phrase, and so it is. And now, the one, the only, the incomparable, the phenomenal Karen Daly.
Good morning, everybody. This is a beautiful song by the legendary Buddy Guy called Skin Deep. Been around a while, I know wrong from right. I learned a long time ago things ain't always black and white. Just like you can't judge a book by the cover, we all gotta be careful how we treat one another. Skin deep, skin deep. Underneath we all look the same. Skin deep, skin deep. Underneath we all look the same. We're all the same. A man in Louisiana never called me by my name. He said, boy, do this and boy, do that, but I never once complained. I knew he had a good heart, but he just didn't understand that I needed to be treated just like any other man. Skin deep, skin deep. Underneath we're all the same. Skin deep, skin deep. Underneath the same. We're all the same. Sat my little child down when he was old enough to know. I said, out there in this great big world, you're gonna meet all kinds of folks. I said, son, it all comes down to just one simple rule, that you treat everybody in just the way that you would want them to treat you. Skin deep, skin deep, underneath we all look the same. Skin deep, skin deep, underneath we all look the same. We're all the same. Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful song, Karen. Thank you so very much. And it's the first time you ever sang it, and you sang it beautifully. Reverend Daryl Jones. Reverend Daryl Jones is a spiritual director, minister, and teacher who provides loving, nurturing, and transformative one-on-one and group learning experiences. In 2008, Daryl was licensed as a spiritual practitioner, and in 2012 was licensed as a minister by the Centers for Spiritual Living. Overall, Reverend Daryl brings over 15 years of study and practice to his work. Daryl offers his services not only to the individual, but also to groups and organizations through workshops, classes, and speaking engagements. Reverend Daryl sees clients in the Chicago area for face-to-face sessions. However, he also provides phone and video chat sessions to clients around the country and internationally. In 2017, Reverend Daryl helped launch Chill, a secular meditation studio that brings the practices and philosophy of mindfulness in the mainstream secular world through weekly public classes and private sessions to businesses, schools, and other individuals. The latest iteration of Chill has been the launching of an app called Chill Anywhere, available for download to any phone device. Reverend Daryl and I have walked this spiritual path together since 2003, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome to our community my friend, the amazing Reverend Daryl Jones.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for accommodating me, Triangle CSL, with being remote. I was watching the service there, but the bit of the delay was in effect, so I apologize for me taking a moment to get on. Thank you, Karen, for that wonderful song. Thank you, Reverend Dusty, for the invitation. And I'm really, really grateful for this conversation this month. But it's more than a conversation for this month. I believe it's a conversation for a lifetime. The words of the song that Karen shared with us, Skin Deep, that underneath we are all just the same is absolutely true and is a scientific principle that we know to be true. But the challenge is that on the surface, above the skin, we are not all the same. And there are lots of beliefs, ideas, and challenges of that diversity that we are grappling with today in our world. And that's where inclusion comes in, right? Inclusion in action. And there's lots of ways to be in the action of inclusion. One of the things I love about Triangle CSL is that ritual of honoring the different traditions and paths of different spiritual and religious faiths as a way of including that all of these traditions are contributing towards a greater expression of the divine, of God, of oneness and wholeness. Some of what I want to really get into today is about inclusion as a practice, though. As a practice, as a lifestyle, as a mindset that really needs our attention every single day. It's not something to do here and there. It's not like taking your car in for an oil change every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. It's something to be in practice in a daily way. And I'm excited, but I'm a little overwhelmed, I have to be honest, with this particular talk title of Colorblind and Colorfull and where it's taken me. This conversation on inclusion is not about race, but I think, at least by the nature of this talk and talking about color, it applies to race. So the principles that we are talking about today are not principles of race. They are principles and a mindset and consciousness that can be applied to any area of our life. But specifically today, let us embrace a little bit of this conversation of race and explore whether or not we are colorblind, or are we seeing the full spectrum of color? Now, as this is a really hot topic in our country and the world today, it's a point of a lot of concern, of debate, of celebration, as well as frustration and anger, as our country continues and the world continues to wake up to new levels of awareness around race and culture. I am not here to have a conversation about what is and what isn't a racist. I am not here to call anyone a racist, and I'm not here to convince someone that they are racist. What I do want to talk about and address specifically as it relates to color and the spectrum of our living is the idea of bias. Before I get into that, to just speak a little bit more to the talk title. First, to be colorblind, literally, it means that you can't distinguish color. It means that you maybe can't see all of the colors in the spectrum. It is estimated that somewhere between 5 to 10% of the world is colorblind. So on the high end of our 7.8 billion people, there's roughly 700,000 people on the planet that are colorblind. So when speaking of race, and someone mentions the phrase that I'm blind to color or I don't see race, for a person of color, and I will speak from my personal experience, it is often hurting and offensive to anyone who is of color to hear this, because it can come across as a dismissive comment. Because such a huge part of who they are is their race, is their cultural background and upbringing. And then at the same time, I think anyone doesn't want to ultimately be understood as only one component or aspect of who they are, whether it be race, gender, age, educational level, whether they use an Android or an iOS system. There's so many different things that we kind of compartmentalize ourselves in. And in doing so, oftentimes it simplifies the full spectrum of who we are down to just one or two things. But how often in our minds do we simplify and whittle down our definition of something or someone to one or two of those identifiers, as I just mentioned? I would argue that it's more often than we are aware. This is what takes us to bias. Bias, roughly defined, means prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way considered to be unfair, or simply just the cause to feel or show inclination or prejudice for or against something or someone. Bias is something that everyone participates in. We do it individually, we do it in our friend circles, with our families, and our communities, our workplaces, our political groups, and definitely as an entire country. When bias is expressed in a collective, it's really an interesting dynamic. Why? Because one of the attributes of bias is that usually we're not aware consciously of the bias and how it affects us. So to be an individual and be biased, which I believe all of us are biased, including myself, it's one thing to move through exercises and study and practices to generally become greater aware of how that bias influences us, moving towards a lifestyle or a mindset that keeps us in that space of awareness. That's what I hope to engage in the workshop this afternoon, is to lovingly and generously embrace ourselves as we become aware of the biases and tendencies that we all hold. But to engage those practices and exercises within a group can prove to be quite challenging. There are so many types of bias. If you've studied this subject, or if you look it up online, a lot of the books that are out today talk about affinity bias, attribution bias, beauty bias, confirmation bias, conformity bias, gender bias, halo and horn bias, which is, I think, probably something that all of us practice, and zero-sum bias, to name a few. Regardless of what type of bias we may express at any given moment, bias is not solely an individual experience. It happens in groups. Pretty much every social, family, and work circle, we can find bias. And if we pull back from those smaller groups, we can find regional and national bias as well. This, I believe, is what our country in particular is reeling about today, and it has been reeling about for centuries. But we are really coming to terms today with the biases that our country has been harboring unknowingly for centuries. It isn't fun or enjoyable to realize we are biased, but we all are, every single one of us. Most of us wish to try to believe that we aren't biased, and that's how we get phrases and people making statements like, I'm colorblind, I don't see race, I don't see color. But the truth is, we all see it. Color difference is there, and that full spectrum ideally is uplifted and celebrated. The challenge is the coming to terms of what we've made color, and in particular race, mean individually and collectively over the years is hard. Race, as we mostly use the term today, wasn't originally used to describe skin tone. So there's a bias right there in our language. Race was used to generally be a term of grouping. So for example, a race of ministers, or a race of French speakers, the race of high school teachers. These groups have nothing to do with skin tone, it's simply a grouping. I believe real, powerful change must begin within ourselves. Yes, we can rally and protest and demand justice and have a call for legislative review and reform and look at systemic bias, which I believe is known as racism. This is our collective work, and I'm grateful for those who are literatively and figuratively on the front lines of this discussion every day. And my challenge to us all today is to embrace the principle for conscious growth and change. The principle of conscious growth and change is self-awareness. To become aware within and practice change within ourselves can only lead to powerful collective change. But we must engage within ourselves regularly and engage this dialogue in all of our circles as best we can. Our world is colorful. Our world is rich and diverse. That is its nature. The full color spectrum, the full spectrum of people on this planet is quite wide, and actually it's very complex. Our minds are constantly seeking ways to make things simpler, easier, and more streamlined. This, one could argue, is why bias exists. The default function of our mind is to group, is to simplify, and this can support us moving through aspects of life quickly. However, today, there is a powerful calling from Spirit to embrace the complexity of our world, to let go of simplicity and embrace the full color spectrum of our living. This is why this topic, this idea of inclusion in action is so important. To include anything, to include everyone, means that we embrace the complexity, the richness, and the diversity of our world. We don't need to make things more diverse in our world. The world is already diverse and always has been. Our challenge now is to include all of that diversity and embrace it as okay. This brings me back to the quote that was read as our inspirational reading today from Ernest Holmes. This is taken from this thing called You in the very first few pages of the book, where Ernest Holmes is kind of making an argument to the reader of union and unity and wholeness and how we are all a part of the same thing, kind of the lyrics of Skin Deep there. He wrote, "This union, however, does not mean sameness. For while unity requires conformity to principles, unity never means uniformity." Now we could kind of just stop and spend the rest of the day picking apart that phrase, and I want to pause on it for a minute before reading on. Unity requires conformity to principles. So we are principle-based teaching, are we not? Science of mind, that we talk about law, we talk about principles. And actually, we are always engaging the principles. We actually cannot stop engaging the principles, but we can consciously use the principles. So for while unity requires, I would say, conformity to principles, unity requires conscious employment of the principles. And when we consciously employ these principles, unity never ever means uniformity. Unity means inclusion of all. Every blade of grass, every crystal, every drop of water, like every individual, is a little different from any other one of its species. Humanity is made up of innumerable individuals, no two alike, and yet society is a complete composite whole moving towards some greater good. What could this good, what could this goal be other than everyone, while remaining an individual, shall find a more complete expression in and among all individuals? So this is a great ideal. This is the desire. This is the creative urge of life, to uniquely allow the spirit of the divine to express in and through us individually and collectively, and to let all of those innumerable expressions be valid, okay, and just. The challenge is there is one of the biases that I think most of us walk around with, some might call it lack mentality, is also known as zero-sum bias. And the basic crux of zero-sum bias is that as one or two people engage or groups come together and start to live their life and to move forward in creating something, that they actually can't co-create and everybody win. That the zero-sum bias is a belief, is an idea that as one increases, in their earnings, or as one increases in their power, as one increases in their understanding, as one increases in their intellect or their education, that means another must lose, that another one must fall away, that one must decrease in their power, must decrease their education, must decrease their influence. And that simply isn't true. And I think intellectually, most of us, if we were to sit down and embrace that idea for a moment, we would go, yeah, that's not true. My rise, my increase, my gain does not take away from anyone else's. But as a collective, we agree to that zero-sum bias heavily. You can see it play out in our politics. If one party was to win, then another party is to lose. If one group is to have its voice, then another one has to be shut down. And it becomes this dualistic thing of fighting for something. This actual mentality, to me, is what leads to war. It's what leads to violence. It's what leads to all of the challenges that we are facing today. So to bring it back to our individual selves, once again, it's this idea of being inclusive and actually embracing the diversity that is already there. There's a couple of quotes that I have here from some people that you may or may not know by name. A couple of them are modern day consultants and activists and teachers in the diversity and inclusion world. And one of them is a former president that you may be interested in hearing some words that came from him. The first is Andres Tapia, who said, "Diversity is the mix. Inclusion is making the mix work," right? So that is inclusion. Diversity is just the mix. That's what's happening. That's what's always there. If you walk outside into nature, there is a diverse flora and fauna in the area that you live. Making that mix work and finding the balance and being and giving and taking and receiving, that's where the work is. Another diversity and inclusion coach, Ola Joseph, said, "Diversity is not how we differ. Diversity is about embracing one another's uniqueness." And that is a very, very simple phrase, but a very, very powerful paradigm and consciousness shifting couple of sentences if you embrace it. And I will repeat it again. Diversity is not how we differ. Diversity is about embracing one another's uniqueness. All too often, diversity focuses simply on difference, which ultimately leads to separation. This is how I'm separate from you. This is how you're separate from me. Whereas diversity is about embracing one another's uniqueness and to embrace the idea that we are all unique, then we are all one and we can embrace that unity principle. The last quote comes from Jimmy Carter. He once said that we have become not a melting pot, but a beautiful mosaic. So look at the words in that sentence. A lot of people say that we are a melting pot, but when we have a melting pot, that means that everything gets distilled down and it becomes one, and it doesn't have flavors and distinguishing traits. But a mosaic is a plethora. It is broad, it is vast, it is diverse. So Jimmy Carter said, "We have become not a melting pot, but a beautiful mosaic. Different people, different beliefs, different yearnings, different hopes, different dreams." There's no meaning that is given to that. That's where the quote ends. We are simply a beautiful mosaic. Different people, different beliefs, different yearnings, different hopes, different dreams. The challenge is, I believe, our relationship with difference. As I mentioned earlier, the mind's default tendency is to simplify things, right? In all of the mindfulness instruction that I have done over the past years, and in particular, getting people to understand why practices like mindful meditation or even prayer or some other contemplative traditions, why they do something to improve and expand the capacity of our brain and our neurology, is that the default tendency of the mind is to start simplifying things. And we learn how to be, to group and to bias and to compartmentalize very, very early as children. Some of the first games that we play in preschool, some of the first things that we learn in books is pairings and groupings. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. Anyone remember that from early childhood television programming? That's not a bad thing, but out of the gate, we are taught to start looking at things based upon difference and to start to naturally exclude them from one another, saying that these things don't belong. The truth is that everything belongs, but there's just a variety. This is where we sit at the edge of our bias. Do we make the difference wrong and exclude, or do we embrace the full color spectrum? The challenge with many of our biases with the people in our lives, whether we personally know them or not, is that the very fact that we think we know and understand everyone is the challenge. Sure, we have understanding of people. We know the loved ones in our life. I understand and know my wife. I understand and know my mother and my friends and my colleagues. I know Reverend Dusty. We've spent so many years together in school and going through spiritual practice together. And if I think I know everything about them, then immediately I am biased. So this is where the rubber meets the road. We have an understanding of everyone. We have an understanding of ourselves. We say we know so and so. But do we really know everything? And are we willing to be in a slower pace to embrace the complexity of the people in our world? First and foremost, the people we know, but then especially to pause and embrace the complexity of the people that we don't really know. To get the full spectrum, to really understand and taste the full flavor palette of who they are and what they bring to the planet. I believe it is in that practice, in that way of practicing inclusion, that our world will continue to expand in a healthier way, that our world will continue to not blind itself in its natural tendency to exclude and to be biased, but to open up to the full spectrum. So to end today, I wanted to engage in just a quick little meditative practice to hopefully bring you into a space of awareness of not necessarily anything being right or wrong, but to recognize that your mind has a default tendency, a default way of seeing people in the world. The natural tendency of the mind is to bias. I don't think bias is necessarily bad. The challenge is when we deny that we are biased, when we deny that there is a blinder that we impose upon our vision of the world. That's when we get into trouble. We don't know all of the things. We don't know everyone. So can we first understand how we view someone, the default tendency of our mind, attention, and awareness? And then are we willing to open up and possibly embrace an even wider spectrum of who they are on the planet? I hope your answer is yes. And so let's give this a little bit of a try today. Take a deep breath in through your nose. And as you exhale, let your attention move away from the screen that's in front of you, or if you're in the room there in Raleigh, just let your attention move inward. And a few questions for your mind to contemplate in these moments. Call into mind someone that you respect. How do you see them? How do you immediately reference them in your mind? Do you recall a certain way they have behaved in the past? Do you recall something that they say to you a lot or to others a lot? Do you even see them at a certain stage in their life dressed in a specific way all the time? This is the default way that your mind sees this individual. That's neither good nor bad, but simply something to be aware of. Is there more about this person than what you know? A deep breath in. And as you exhale, call into mind now someone that you don't hold in high regard. Someone I dare say you may not even respect. Once again, become aware of how you see them. How do you reference them in your mind? Do you recall this person in a certain scene or situation in your mind or scenario? Notice if it is current or maybe it's dated. This again is bias. This is a prejudged, a predetermined view of this individual. Whether it's the person you like, the person that you don't like, it is prejudice. It is bias in favor or against a thing, a person, or a group. We are all creatures of habit. And unless we do something to review the default habits of our mind as it relates to how we relate to the world, how we let biases influence us, then they will continue to live and do and be and influence us just as they always have. If you are choosing to activate inclusion in action, in practice, then let this be the beginning or the continuance of awareness. Not to find fault, but simply to understand, to grow and really spreading your mind's eye, your arms to include and welcome in the rich spectrum and diversity of the divine, of the universe of God. And so let's close in prayer, blessing this state of awareness in our hearts and minds, knowing that first and foremost, there is only one power and presence that is ever happening and has ever happened, and that is the power and presence of the divine. It is this creative something that knows no boundaries, that knows no compartmentalization. It just is. This is the way that we come into the world, filled full with the divine creative nature of the whole Spirit. And we are one with it, not just at birth, but at all times in our lives. But our work now is to stay connected to that truth, not only for ourselves, but for every single person that we come into contact with in our lives. Are we willing to take off the blinders and to embrace the rich complexity of the divine, known as you, known as me, known as them, known as us? Let that answer be yes today. And there's no way to figure this out other than to welcome it into action. So here and now, I speak a word in prayer for all of us. Let us be instruments of awakening. Let us be individual points on the planet for the full spectrum of God to be understood, embraced, accepted, digested, shared, loved, uplifted as a way of bringing us together as opposed to separating us. Let us embrace the full spectrum of the whole Spirit of the universe of God, within and without. And by right of consciousness, by right of mind, by right of neurons firing in that way, I know that we individually and collectively begin to awaken to a greater sense of oneness, unity, and wholeness that will allow not only this country, but this entire planet to move into its greatest yet becoming. And for that, I am grateful. So we release this word, we release this talk, we release our hearts and minds to the open acceptance, the full color spectrum of the divine. And so it is. Amen. Thank you so much, everybody.
Woo! Thank you so very much, Reverend Daryl. It's beautiful. It is now time for our conscious giving. The Triangle Center for Spiritual Living is sustained by the giving of our time, treasure, and talent. And this is the time every week when we offer financial support to make sure that we can continue to be a beacon of light for ourselves and for others. In this moment, let us bless this thing called money, which is really just God in action. We send forward these gifts with an intention for our money to make a difference. We send forth this offering fueled with our desire to be a part of funding a world that works for everyone. We affirm the truth that together today's offering lifts this spiritual community, prospers the one giving, and contributes to the experience of sufficiency in the world. Please repeat after me. I am grateful for all that I receive, and I'm grateful for all that I may give. Thank you all so very, very much. The text to tithe number is up on the screen, and you can most certainly use that, or you can go to our website at trianglecsl.org, and up in the right-hand corner there is a give button, or you could always send a check to the Triangle Center for Spiritual Living at 4000 Bearcat Way in Morrisville, North Carolina, 27560. Thank you again so very, very much. And now please welcome back to her guitar and her seat and her mic, the lovely Karen Daly.
Thank you, Dusty. Whew. What a good day. Good day. This is one that hasn't come around on the wheel in a little bit, called One Day by Modest Yahoo. Sometimes I lay under the moon and thank God that I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me too soon, 'cause I'm here for a reason. And sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. And when negativity surrounds, well, I know someday it'll all turn around. 'Cause all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that they don't want to fight no more, and there'll be no more wars, and our children can play one day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. It's not about win or lose, 'cause we all lose when they feed on the souls of the innocent, blood-drenched pavement. Keep on moving though the waters stay raging. And in this maze you could lose your way, your way, your way. And it might drive you crazy, but don't let it faze you, no way, no way. And sometimes in your tears you'll drown, but don't ever let it get you down. And when negativity surrounds, well, you know someday it'll all turn around. 'Cause all your life you've been waiting for, you've been praying for the people to say that they don't want to fight no more, and there'll be no more wars, and our children can play one day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. One day this will all change. We'll treat people all the same. We're gonna stop with the violence. We're gonna end the hate. And one day we'll all be free and proud to be under the same sun, singing songs of freedom. And sometimes in our tears we'll drown, but we'll never let it get us down. And when negativity surrounds, well, we know someday it'll all turn around. 'Cause all our lives we've been waiting for, we've been praying for the people to say that they don't wanna fight no more, and there'll be no more wars, and our children can play one day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. Let's start today. Why not today? Thank you. Have an awesome Sunday, everybody.
Well, Karen, just thank you so much. It's sort of a running joke about how Karen's songs always make me cry, but that one has a special place in my heart because 2 summers ago she sang that for my son's high school graduation. And so I'm just very thankful for the gift she is in my life and to our entire community. And speaking of community, community doesn't come from being together in the same room. Community comes from sharing our hearts, sharing our gifts with each other, sharing our time, our talents, our treasures. And so our community is strong. Just because we can't see each other doesn't mean that we aren't feeling each other all the time, spiritually. So one way we can support each other is through our ongoing prayer practice. So if anyone would like a prayer, please go to our website at trianglecsl.org. And on the home page, there is a button in the upper right-hand corner. Click on that button and fill in the request form. We will get that prayer and send it out to all of our ministers and practitioners. Okay. Now, in the comfort of your own room, please rise up, and we're going to do our August affirmations and say it with gusto, because it's the gusto that makes it happen. So this is a call and response, so please repeat after me. I am one with divine creation. I am one with divine creation. The nature of that divine creation is one of diversity. The nature of that divine creation is one of diversity. I see the wonderful diversity that is expressed uniquely as each of us. The wonderful diversity that it is expressed uniquely as one of us. I embrace the multiplicity of creation as a community expressing divinity on earth. Embrace the multiplicity of creation as a community expressing divinity on earth. As such, I claim harmony, acceptance, and love for all. As such, I claim harmony, acceptance, and love for all. My heart and my life are filled with delight. My heart and my life are filled with delight. I am the activity of inclusion itself. The activity of inclusion itself. And so it is. Okay, so I'm going to do our final prayer, and I'm going to do it quick so that we have plenty of time to have lunch and things before it's time to tune in to Reverend Daryl's workshop. And just also a reminder that stay around for our final closing video. But for this moment, please close your eyes. And as I do that, I see this unity. I see this oneness. I know that I am one with all that is. And what that is good, it is God, it is love, it is power, it is wisdom, and it's all that same goodness inside, regardless of what it looks like outside. I know that today we've had a powerful lesson from Daryl, and I see that, and I feel that, and I know that, and I see that lifting our world. So I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for him. I'm so grateful for Karen. I'm so grateful for everybody who participated in today's service, whether you were in the room with us or you were connected to us through electronic means. I'm grateful for this work. I'm grateful for this power and presence, and I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful. So knowing that this has uplifted us all, that this is broadening our ability to express God in the world, I let it go and ask you to join me with our favorite words, and so it is.